Today, I'm joined by Paul Schwartz, a commercial real estate broker with over 30 years of experience in Sonoma County. Paul began his career in the nonprofit management, spending over a decade as a Chamber of Commerce executive, where he built a strong foundation in economic development, marketing, and public policy. He transitioned into commercial real estate in the early 1990s and has since represented investors, corporate clients, banks, landlords, and tenants across a wide range of transactions. In addition to brokerage, Paul advises clients on asset management, valuation, dispositions, and even served as an expert witness in commercial real estate matters. His expertise spans the sale and leasing of office, industrial, and retail properties, as well as land, helping clients not just transact, but maximize the value of their real estate decisions. Paul, welcome to Protea Conversations.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're fortunate to be living through a heat wave here in Northern California at the moment, and it's beautiful outside, and it's a great day to talk to you about our local area as you are in the commercial real estate space.
Yes, absolutely. It's always easier to talk real estate when it's nice out.
I think so. I think all properties look a little bit better with some sunshine. They're always, you tend to see the better when it's doom and gloom and all of that outside. Everything looks a little grayer.
Absolutely. No, it's great to be here. And it's, I'm in the heart of Sonoma County here at the apex of Highway 12 and 101, where my office is in downtown Santa Rosa.
Such a good part of the country to live in. And, it's for me intriguing because it would feel like the current market in terms of property in California is under a little bit of pressure just with, between the political environment, about industry pressures, just, global economic problems. I'd love to just before we really kick off and talk about your career, what is going on in the world of real estate in our local area?
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, we have been on a pretty steady, solid ground since COVID in the commercial real estate space. We've had steady growth in value appreciation of properties and in minor improvements or increases in rents, which help investors maintain properties more effectively if they have the revenue stream to do a better job of maintaining and repairing properties. The one exception, of course, is the space that you work in most, which is the wine industry, which is really the anomaly in the whole commercial real estate spectrum right now. So if you were to remove the wine industry industrial component from the overall industrial sector, we'd see a very different set of circumstances and data points. Generally speaking, the overall market is healthy and is active, and there's, I think, been some pull out of the stock market maybe in recent months. I think primarily due to people wanting to have a more predictable asset base, maybe just a more diverse portfolio. So I think we're seeing some of that, and then the third component might be that our population is also getting a little bit older, and we're seeing a lot more owners of assets across the country, and certainly in Sonoma County, which has a large retirement population. We're seeing a lot of that generation, my generation and older, liquidating assets, doing dispositions to cash out or pay off partners, or even to just where properties have been handed down within the family. Maybe the kids just want to cash out and have the capital to buy a home or something like that. So there are a lot of variables in play, but I'd say those are some of the more significant that are driving the commercial real estate market right now. The last one I'll mention is the owner-user market. Again, with the exception of the wine industry, the owner-user market buying buildings is very strong right now. The general economy in Sonoma County in the North Bay, north of San Francisco, is doing quite well.
That's really interesting to hear, because you hear so much doom and gloom because of, the cost of capital is so much higher right now than it was just a few years ago. The interest rates going up. Is some of that being driven, like you said, opportunistically because people are trying to, so there is, there's things on the market that have historically not been available, and people want to jump on that? Or do you think there's just a mindset shift from people going like, hey, we'll lease versus, hey, there's an opportunity to buy, so why not take it?
One of the things that's really driving the investment market for owner occupants of buildings is the financing, as you alluded to, is actually more attractive in some ways today than it's ever been, in the sense that business can go out and finance the purchase of a building for as little as 10% down through the Small Business Administration real estate lending arm. So if you've got a business and you don't want to invest a lot of capital into the real estate side, you don't have to. And the resulting benefits are substantial in terms of depreciation, write-offs, various deductions that one can achieve by owning their own building. So that's driving a lot of the owner-occupant side of the purchase world. The other side being the investor, pure investor who's looking for return on investment, strictly looking for the ROI. That's a little more difficult to achieve when interest rates are obviously higher. But interest rates have crept down a little bit in the last year and a half. The playing field has become a little more level for investors and a little more attractive in terms of investing and financing properties, in the 2 to 25 million range or 1 to 25 million range.
So, I mean, would you generally suggest to people like it's a good opportunity right now to get into the commercial real estate space, or is it just, as always, just a decent place to put your money?
I think that as a business owner, it's always advantageous or almost always advantageous to own your own building because you control the costs, you control how you want to use the building. You don't have to answer to some other third party owner that is telling you can do this or you can't do that. And it gives you flexibility to say, well, if I want to modify my building because I'm changing my business model or whatever, one has control over that and one can write off those costs as part of their tenant improvement costs. I think that's the biggest driver of all, is just that control factor and predictability. From an purely investment standpoint, which is a different hat that, again, many of the investment purchasers wear, is that segment of the market might be a little more sluggish than the owner occupant market, again, because of interest rates. But that's being countered by the fact that costs of buildings have leveled off. And in some cases, capitalization rates have gone up, which is cap rates being the return on investment for a buyer who's investing in a property for purely ROI. I think the market has adjusted to the interest rates. So where we have an interest rate of X, we generally have to have a cap. We'd like to see a cap rate, or an investor wants to see a capitalization rate that's slightly above that to give them some margin. I'll call it a profit margin or whatever the terminology might be, to offset the cost of debt service and have some operating capital to work with as well. And maybe capital or excess funds for reserves for periodic repairs and maintenance. So the market's been sort of adjusting on the cap rate side to the interest rate fluctuations.
Really interesting. Last piece on this, what advice would you give somebody who's considering entering in the commercial real estate space? Like what advice would you give them to make sure that they do it the right way?
Well, the first and most obvious answer from a commercial real estate broker is hire a broker. So that you know what you're getting into, because there are great investments in commercial real estate and then there are poor investments in commercial real estate. And there's an old saying that goes, you don't make your money in real estate when you sell the property, you make it when you buy it. And the message there is, if you don't buy smart, you're never gonna see the benefits of your investment if you're looking 10 years out or something like that and say, well, I'm hoping to get a 6% or 7% appreciation on my asset while I'm also getting a 6% annual return. Well, that appreciation may not occur if you don't buy it right. So having the right tools in your toolbox, analytical tools, knowledge, market knowledge, financial analysis capabilities, and a good team. I'd say you've got to have a good lender, a good CPA, good real estate attorney, and ideally a good broker.
No, great advice. I always tell people, if you're going to do anything, make sure you have a good, you know, like, what is it? Bench of professionals that can help you. So that is really, really good advice. It feels like, a lot of people went into the market, especially at the wine industry, without that bench of professionals, and a lot of people overpaid for assets. And I think that's where we're seeing some of the issues at the moment. Does that feel like a fair statement, other than obviously other, market driven issues? It does feel like to some people just overpaid and now they're stuck.
It's hard to say in the wine industry because it's the product that they're buying is so emotional and experiential.
Hmm.
It's not just like you're buying an industrial building and you're, producing widgets. If you're buying a winery or you're buying a facility that has a tasting room and production facility and maybe vineyards on the property, there's more than just the bones of the building you're buying. There's a whole experience you're buying. So it's hard to make a general statement that many or most people overpaid. I think it has more to do with, and you know better than I do on this by far, I think it has more to do with, great production and trends and buyer trends and consumer trends than maybe it does what they paid for the properties that they now occupy.
Fair. I'll take it. So, Paul, you've been in commercial real estate for a long time. Is this where you always spent your career, or was there a career before commercial real estate?
There was a career before commercial real estate, which actually tied into and led me into commercial real estate. And that career was in nonprofit corporate management. So I have a background in, I have a master's degree in public administration with an emphasis on land use planning and organizational development. And I was a nonprofit manager for chambers of commerce. I actually been on staff of 3 chambers of commerce in the state of California, one of which I was the executive director of, and 2 others I was in a second position. The most significant of those was the chamber in Santa Rosa, where I was in charge of economic development and a number of other programs that the Chamber of Commerce platform was all about. In the course of that activity, I met people in the development world, commercial real estate world, every aspect of business in Sonoma County. And I was introduced to the commercial real estate arena by virtue of some work I was doing for the chamber. And I was ultimately hired by a developer who built office buildings, industrial buildings, a hotel, a restaurant, and so on, to serve as their marketing and leasing manager. They knew I had the tools to do the marketing and the administrative side and the creative side, and I had an economic development background, and I also had a relationship with a lot of people in the community. What they were looking for is someone who could market their office buildings for lease and draw in companies into their buildings, both from the local market as well as from outside the market. And that's how I started in commercial real estate. Yeah. And I might mention that whole background in organizational development and land use planning and public policy analysis is part of the toolbox I use every day, because I manage clients, I manage groups of clients, I manage clients who are nonprofits or partnerships. I manage processes involving cities and counties where we're looking to process permits or deal with public agencies. And I am also engaged on a daily basis actively with businesses that are looking to maximize their opportunities for growth and development.
No, it's such an interesting space because when I think of commercial real estate and just like businesses using space, like I'm in an office space right now, you're in one as well, and then I think about like malls and how they're struggling to get tenants and people to stick in it. And I guess my question, just as I think through all of this, is how has this like world of commercial real estate changed from when you first began as this like marketing and leasing manager, where you were trying to fill people to this development into a commercial real estate broker and providing those services from the other side a lot of the time, or from both sides? Like, how has this world changed? Like, we know that a lot of things have happened. COVID accelerated some of that change as well because everybody now gets things delivered. But it feels like it would be a significantly different world from when you first started out to the world that we operate in right now.
In some respects, I would say so. In other ways, the fundamentals are still there. So the ways that it's changed the most, I would say, are on the technology side. The tools in my toolbox that I rely upon every day didn't exist 35 years ago when I started in the business. whether it be databases, software programs that I use to manage the projects I'm working on, contracts that were not necessarily available in 3 or 5 or 10 different iterations that I could draw upon and say, this contract best fits this particular transaction or whatever it may be. And and so that's sort of the internal machinations that have changed. I think the external, so to speak, or the community-based changes have to do more with the diversification of types of businesses that are moving in or needing space or just operating in our county, which require a more diverse type of product, buildings, assets that maybe didn't exist 30 or 40 years ago in this county. I think it's interesting, like on the retail side, you mentioned shopping centers. That's a big shift in the economy and in real estate, in that, shopping centers used to be the go-to place. And it was not just a shopping experience, it was a social experience. And especially I'll say, in areas of the country or the world where weather isn't so great 6 months of the year, maybe even more, those closed shopping malls it, became a huge social mecca.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that has transitioned somewhat, I think, partly because, uh, and not that they aren't viable in certain markets like Minneapolis, the Great America Mall and so
Yeah.
forth, and other malls around the country are flourishing in some areas. I think the areas that are suffering are the suburban markets, the suburban shopping centers, for reasons of competition, uh, and mostly, of course, the most significant of which is online purchasing. So it's changed the whole dynamic of the consumer experience. People are not necessarily going in and trying on a pair of shoes. They're buying them online, and if they don't fit, they send them back. We all do that. So that's the most significant on the retail side. The office market is a market unto itself. And it's interesting. People always ask me, like, what's the status of the commercial real estate world? Well, we have to break it out by market segment. What's happening in retail might be totally different than what's happening in industrial or office or apartment development. But pointing to the office sector for a moment, there have been so many hurdles that we've had to get through in the last 10 years in Sonoma County, between fires, COVID, economic conditions, and San Francisco actually is probably the most noteworthy. I mean, at one point they have 50 million square feet of vacant office space in the city. And that was all tied to, the technology world and the need to come to the office to collaborate. And all of a sudden COVID changed everything. Now we can work remotely and we can still collaborate. Everybody's accustomed to doing what we're doing right now, which is communicating virtually. And all of a sudden it changed the whole realm of office utilization and demand. And now the pendulum has swung back a little bit more to center, I'll say, where companies, certainly in Sonoma County, have come back to work. Maybe they have some hybrid arrangements, but the majority of people are back coming to an office. And what's happened in San Francisco and other tech centers and urban markets is AI and other entities or other platforms have created massive amounts of jobs, many of which do require people to come into the office and collaborate.
Yeah. Oh, really, really interesting. Well, obviously, you said the basics are the same, right? But with all these changes that happened over the years, and what it sounds like a lot more changes over the last 5 years was accelerated because of COVID. How do you stay abreast of the changes and things happening in the market? Like, what do you do to stay successful? Because I think, in the world that we're going through right now, I think people are really struggling. Like, they feel like every time they make a change, because the world has changed again, right? Like, it feels like if you're changing, you're already too late. Like, the next change is a long way. And you've had a really long, successful career and had multiple changes going on it, but yet you stay, you know, top of the pile of commercial real estate brokers in the area. Like, what's your secret to doing that? Like there's got to be something that you're doing that the rest of us can learn from.
Well, I would say first and foremost, it's hard work. It's just pedal to the metal,
Mm-hmm.
reading a lot of things, periodicals and publications that relate to not only the local market, but the regional and national trends. Continually raising the bar on my level of knowledge by attending workshops and webinars and technology upgrades that help make me more efficient and make my ability to provide services to my clients more thorough and more accurate and more efficient. I think that the other thing would be that I'm a collaborator. I'm a networker, and I thrive on the human interaction, human experience. And I'm I'll say I'm very comfortable in public settings and in meetings and in communicating messages that I feel are necessary to communicate in the course of a negotiation, for example. And everything comes down to when you talk about success, we're commissioned commercial brokers or real estate folks are all on commission, independent contractors. We don't get paid if we don't close a transaction. So the ability to facilitate that process is truly an art. And some people are good at it and some people aren't. I happen to think I'm pretty good at it. And so I'm not one that approaches things from the position of I'm just here to advocate for my client. I'm here to facilitate getting to yes. And if we don't get to yes, neither party is going to be happy. Or let's just say we'll never come to a point where we close a transaction. So the skill sets are so interesting in that the human dynamics, the psychology of everything is just as important as the technical aspects of what I do. So I think I would say you may feel differently now that you've listened to me for 20 minutes, but I think I'm a pretty good communicator and I think I'm a pretty good listener when I'm with a client. And if they feel heard and they feel as though I understand what they're trying to accomplish and maybe the problems and the hurdles that they are looking at as they attempt to achieve their goals, I feel like I'm equipped now after 10,000 plus hours, as Malcolm Gottlieb would say, to master the art of it and
Hmm.
provide the best possible guidance I can provide. And that results in more success.
No, I do love that. Practice makes perfect. And you mentioned that you're mastered it, but at the same time, you talk about curiosity and continuous learning, right? Which I love and I think is such an underappreciated skill to have. That ability to continuously want to learn, even if you think you're the best at what you do, is really what makes you go from good to great, right? Like it's really the difference between those who are posers and show that all their success and the ones that just quietly sit in the background, just like absolutely killing it and doing better than the rest.
I like to say and I've truly experienced this. I learn something every day. I learn something new every day in my industry. Yesterday, I mean, I won't cite the example because it's too involved, but literally I went through a process over the last week that I hadn't anticipated or had never seen before. And lo and behold, I learned, well, if this problem arises, this is what we need to do. And then this is how we're going to do it. And the client benefits, everybody wins. And ultimately I hopefully am successful at, completing those transactions and that it's constant. The problem solving aspect of what I do, the troubleshooting, troubleshooting is often thought of in a technology world, but
Hmm.
we troubleshoot all day.
Yep.
How are we going to solve this problem? Maybe there's an issue with a tenant in a building or there's an environmental concern. How are we going to get financing for this project? Right now, it doesn't appear as though it's going to be viable. Well, I think my greatest strength is really never giving up, never assuming that it can't be accomplished.
Yeah, I love that. What advice do you give to people to stay curious? People that just feel like, oh, I hate learning, I hate reading, I hate, you know, those webinars go on and I just shut down. Like how do people change their mindset towards it?
Well, I think there's really two simple reasons for being engaged in those things. One is personal benefit. The more knowledgeable you are, the more likely you are to be successful in close transactions. And the second reason is if you're going to be in this business, at least in my view, and be of service to people, you want to be of the highest possible service and bring positive results to all of our clients. How else am I going to do that if I'm not on top of my game?
Yeah, no, that's great. You spoke about sort of the like negotiation and being a collaboration and coming to an answer. And I hear a lot of times that hey, a good negotiation is when both sides feel a little like unhappy about the deal, right? Like if one person's super happy, like we know something's gone wrong in the process. How do people like learn these skills? Like how, like we all in some point, if we own a business or you even in business, you're doing some sort of sales, right? And this is what you do. I mean, negotiation sales, like you're in that place, you're trying to get to the outcome that a transaction happens. You've done it a long time, you've learned how to do it. But like if I was just starting my career out right now and I wanted to get into this your space, any sales type space, what advice would you give somebody entering the space to help them improve those skills? Not to be a master day one, but at least to be on the right track to get there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, like every industry, we have educational opportunities every day in every aspect of what we do, from marketing to communications to technology and platforms. And one of those skill sets that is very trainable is negotiations. And so I've gone through a number of negotiation courses or webinars over the years, many, many years. And that would be the first thing I would recommend to someone who's trying to hone those skills, is to engage in some of the educational aspect of it, which gets back to our last question. How can you be at the top of your game if you're not really in the know about things? And a lot of it is communication skills. Unfortunately, I see, and we're all guilty of this. I mean, there are times when I'm just not as good as I'd like to be or could have been in a particular situation. I have to continually work on me too. It's not just a sort of an other thing. It's how can I be the best at what I do by being the best communicator, the best listener? How do I best articulate something that I need to educate someone about? Because a lot of what I do is imparting information to people in a way that they can understand it, grasp it, and then make intelligent decisions based on that information. So my ability to communicate is absolutely essential in my effectiveness or ineffectiveness. I think that would be the thing to do, is to work on not only negotiation techniques and skills, but also work on personal communication skills.
I got two things on communication I want to say. I'm going to say each one of them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them.
Yeah.
The first one is I think everybody, high school, maybe college age, or even afterwards, if you haven't had the opportunity, go on a public speaking course, something like Toastmasters. And not necessarily to learn how to talk in front of public, but more how to keep your thoughts straight when you're in a situation of pressure. I think it's one of the best ways to develop communication skills when you're having to talk to people, be in these pressurized situations. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's a brilliant observation, actually, because when I'm sitting in a meeting with a client, if I can't keep my thoughts together and have a progressive linear thought process that goes from where we are starting to where I think we want to end up, I'm not going to get there. It's entirely a function of the ability to have a plan for what I'm going to say and do in a client meeting, for example, and then be able to calmly and confidently communicate that. Keeping my thoughts straight is really critical. Critical. I think you hit on something that very few people talk about.
Great. I love that.
Yeah.
My second thought on communication, and I think this is where a lot of professionals go wrong, is when we try communicate with our clients or potential clients, we talk to them as if they have all the knowledge that we have and understand all the jargon that we use. And I think everybody in the professional space would get better at their jobs if they just got off their high horses and spoke to people like people rather than talk over them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we like to say, or I like to say in my business, I heard this from somebody who far smarter than I was 30 years ago, said, talk to clients at their level, not at my level. Whatever my level is irrelevant. It's irrelevant in terms of having knowledge, but speak to people at their level and their way of speaking. In fact, as an example, you said talking over people. I was in a conversation with a title escrow officer the other day. She was using terminology that I didn't even know. And it was very frustrating. So I was the client. So here it was a bit of a role reversal for me. And I finally stopped her and I said, you're not speaking my language. I'm in the business and I don't understand what you're saying. So please, if you would, explain to me in layman's terms what you're trying to tell me so that I can impart that information to my client. That's the ultimate direction I was going with it. And I was lost. So I said, just speak to me like you're just talking to your neighbor or your mother or somebody, not like an expert in commercial real estate, which I don't ever claim to be because there's so much I don't know. I won't reuse that terminology, but talk to the client at their level and listen to them and mirror their pace, mirror their level of volume. Don't just be who we are. Try to create a comfortable setting for the discourse.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
You mentioned networking, and you go when I go on social media, people are like, oh, what's one thing people should always learn when they're at college and this and that to make their better careers? And networking always comes up and developing a network. And I know you've done a great job at this. We met in a networking group, so I know how good you are at this process. But I know a lot of people struggle with it. People like me don't really like to be around people. So there's the problems that we run into. There's other people that are very good to be in that networking space, but then don't know how to do anything after the fact. Like, great, I had 15 good conversations, but that came to nothing. What advice would you give to people that would help them just be better at networking and building a network? Because I do feel like this is a place, especially in the environment where we are right now, where everything happens over a screen and people don't get together. Like, what can two people do to just be a little bit better at this process of networking?
Well, I'm always reminded of this as you ask this question. This is what comes to mind. You know, the old adage, we were given 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. And
Hmm.
that's because we should do more listening than we do talking. And I translate that into asking questions. And most people love to talk about what they do or who they are or whatever. And I happen to have a genuine curiosity about people. I'm interested in what they do. I always ask people what they do and how they do it. And that's very engaging with people and very complimentary to people, flattering. And I don't do it inauthentically. I do it because I'm interested. And that tends to lead to the response being after they've shared whatever they've shared with me. So tell me about you, or what do you do? What do you do in the course of your day? You know, or what's important to you? I just find that because I'm genuinely interested, it brings out that quality in other people. And then I can build on that and say, well, here's what I do. And I understand you own a business and how do you run your business and where do you run your business? And what type of facility do you have? And that one thing leads to another. I can build a knowledge base about their company and about them in the course of a 10-minute conversation. So I'm not an expert. I don't know a lot about social media. I'm a neophyte, relatively speaking, because I'm
Hmm.
older and I'm not accustomed to it. I just think it's more about the human, one-on-one engagement and the willingness to ask questions and genuinely make mental note of what you hear and not interrupt people.
Yeah, no, that is good, and I love that advice. Just listen a little bit more, pay attention, ask questions. People remember people that ask questions about them. You know, it shows that, especially if you're listening to hear and not listening just to, if you're actually paying attention to what they're saying and remember some of it, I think it does make a big difference. I guess the follow-on question to all of that is like, how do you stay relevant, right? Because I think that's one of the things people struggle with. Like, hey, I do all this networking, but I feel like I introduced myself to that person 10 times and they don't remember who I am. Like, how do
Yeah.
we stay relevant in front of people?
Question. Well, I have to find out in the course of the conversation with them something about them that might cause me to be relevant to them. So that's the importance of asking a lot of questions. So I might catch something in their response that triggers my thought to, oh, well, I didn't realize you were doing this or that. I'm interested to know more about that. Tell me about that. And then that might result in me saying something like, this is what I do actually, or this is an area I work in. And if you're interested at all, I'd be more than happy to share some information. I'm constantly offering data to people, market data, you know, market information that most people don't have at their fingertips, but have an interest in knowing about. And most people are intrigued by real estate.
Yeah. in
It
some way or
just
form.
in some form or another, mostly and usually on the residential side. And that's okay too, because I can engage in that part of the conversation because I have enough knowledge of that aspect of the market to be conversational about it. And that can lead to other questions and other, I'll say, networking opportunities and relevance in the conversation. But we have to be listening for those relevancies. I'm reminded that when I can always tell when someone's or when I'm not really listening because I'm ready to ask, ready to interject something before I've really heard what they're saying. And it's sort of then the conversation becomes disjointed and they know that. And so I try to be as attentive as I can be and as patient as I can be and ask a lot of questions that I think creates relevancy to other people in that networking experience. And I offer a lot of well, I like to say it this way. I like to be the resource person for them in the commercial real estate space. So if you have a question about it, I'll go find the answer for you if I don't know it.
Yeah, it makes me think of the Go Giver book and, adding more value than what the price is, right? And like that's sort of way to stay relevant. If you're adding value even before the transaction happens, like who else is going to come to you? The person that's been adding them value all the time, right? Like that's who they're looking for.
Yeah.
Paul, given us a lot of advice so far, but this is, generally a podcast focused on leadership and developing better leaders. So it would absolutely be the worst of me if we did not speak about your involvement with Leadership Santa Rosa and the founding of that back in the day. I know this is, more like one of the most valuable things out there for anybody in the Santa Rosa area is Leadership Santa Rosa. Highly spoken about, creates great community, builds those networks that people didn't know they needed.
Mhm.
I'd love to just hear the story of how it got started and what your involvement looks like these days.
Sure. Well, thank you for asking about that. It's a fabulous 42-year-old program that I was a part of starting in the early 80s here in Santa Rosa. And the concept is one of community leadership and education development. In other words, bringing together emerging community leaders from all walks of business and all walks of life, healthcare, government, education, business, culture, arts, science, criminal justice. I'm trying to recall all of the sectors have
Pretty much
represented.
any business in Santa Rosa
Anybody.
has had some sort
Right,
of representative. It's
right,
incredible the number of people that you meet that have gone through the program.
right. So there are roughly 30. Well, so we created the program in 1982, put together a curriculum with an advisory board of already existing community leaders with the intent of attracting people to attend this 10-month program, 1 day per month, 1 full day per month in a room together, or touring businesses or meeting with educators or touring the county jail and meeting with the sheriff or whatever it may be, or going out on a farm and understanding what farming is all about in Sonoma County. Bring those 32 emerging leaders together to hear from current leaders in various industries and sectors with the objective of not only educating, but building a collaborative environment where when a nonprofit organization's struggling or maybe they need some guidance in some facet or a business or an educator wants more input from the private sector, say in education. I know Sonoma State's always been very involved with Leadership Santa Rosa. There's a group of people who we can call upon that are in the room together with us every month, building relationships mostly and building a common base of knowledge. And so now that program is in its second year, I'm very proud to say, and there are well over 1,000 graduates. And my role was I learned about this concept at a conference in San Diego in 1982, and I brought the idea back to my office in Santa Rosa to our board of directors and ultimately raised the necessary funds and put the curriculum and the structure together to make it happen.
It's absolutely incredible that it's been able to last for 42 years and still one of the most sought after programs in the area. I mean, what do you think has been the ultimate success of the program? Why does it stay so relevant to this day?
I think it gets right back to the idea that when I have this group of 31 other people in the room with me as a participant in a class, as we call it, the class, I have 31 other people that are now my network and part of my resource base of, I'll say, dedicated community emerging leaders from all walks of life. So I have the ability to call on so-and-so banker with a question that I might have about something I'm working on in my business, or I'm an educator and I want to bring that expertise into the classroom or whatever it may be. And so I feel as though the biggest positive impact is community problem solving through building those relationships, so that when we sit at a table and we talk about why is the Santa Rosa school system and district in total collapse, let's let's have the business community at the table. Let's have not just the educators, but let's have the medical community there, and let's have the folks that are working in this in the therapy and psychology world talk about the impacts on, or the needs that students have at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels, so that we can be better at what we do in the education arena. Well, how do we get that input? We get it through collaboration with other professionals from all walks of life. So that's one aspect of it. I think the other reason that it's been so successful and lasted so long is it has generated a lot of great people, great leaders who were just blossoming when they got in the program, and ultimately became nonprofit executives and leaders in this education world, and governmental officials and elected officials. We've had many people run for office as a result of their experience and interest in public service and in what government's doing primarily locally. So I see the tentacles of Leadership Santa Rosa in every aspect of the community.
No, it's fantastic. I only hear good things about it. If you're listening to this and you're in Santa Rosa and you're on the fence about it, jump on over, put in your application, try get into one of the cohorts. You will not regret it. I literally have never heard a bad word about it. Every person that goes through it is so thankful for the program. So, and they take a lot of pride of being in the program, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There are, like I said, over 1,000 graduates that really had virtually nobody tell me they didn't have an absolutely fantastic experience. And by the way, if someone's interested in listening to this, they can call me, or they can, and I can also refer them to other graduates or graduates. I'm not a graduate. I was the producer of the program, but I connect people with other graduates who are knowledgeable about what's going on with the program in today's LSR, as we call it, Leadership Santa Rosa.
Fantastic. Paul, what's the best advice you've ever received in your life?
I would say that probably the best advice overall in my business is build systems to run everything, anything and everything you can that is not of the human communications part of it. And even that now with AI has changed. Systems really, when I got into the business, we didn't have a lot of software platforms to use as commercial real estate. We had one or two, and we didn't have a variety of platforms for documents and contracts, and now we do. And every aspect of what I do is now supported by a plentiful supply of technical and technologically driven systems. And I think when someone told me like 25 years ago, when the internet, or 30 years ago, whenever the internet really came into focus, and we were all of a sudden we were doing this thing called emailing, and we were doing this thing called, using, the computer to access data in a way that we'd never done before in commercial real estate, because we're dinosaurs in our industry. We're used to doing things on paper, contracts, sitting in a room, rolling up our sleeves and getting things done. That's not the most efficient way, though, in many instances. So the advice I was given was, as much as one can, build systems into your practice.
Yeah, I love that. Good systems that are repeatable, reduce the number of errors that people make. It makes, processes a little bit more predictable. It brings that calm that we spoke about earlier to the whole process. So I love that. That is great advice. Paul, I've really appreciated the time today. You've given us so much lessons, learned so much. I do want to sort of get into a little bit of more who Paul the person is before we end out here. So just share with the viewers, what does Paul do outside of, the commercial real estate space? Like what does
Yeah.
casual Paul look like?
Yeah. Well, I look like this, but I am not sitting at a desk. So the things I most enjoy, I would say, are, well, first, I hate being indoors. I love to be outside. So being inside working is really, for me, a challenge. So any chance I get to a tennis court or a golf course or a pool or beach, I'm there. Or a mountain, I'm all over it. My wife and I spend a lot of time running out to the beach, Dorn Beach, or that area on the weekends just to get away, clear our heads. I think the fresh air is really a huge benefit to me because my weeks are very cerebral as yours are in the accounting world, and it can be a little bit overwhelming at times. I think also I enjoy really good food. I love great music. I listen to a lot of music. I go to a lot of concerts. Saw Brandy Carlisle 2 Fridays ago in San Francisco.
Nice.
I love live music. I've not been a musician, but I've dabbled in music, and I have friends who are musicians. My brother-in-law is a musician. My son's a musician in Boston with a band. And so I've always kind of been around it. My mother was a musician. Don't know what happened to me there. I dropped the ball on the musical practice side, but I was out doing sports and being outdoors. That was my thing. So, and there's nothing better than a nice glass of wine over a great dinner with my wife or friends and just having a really good conversation. I'm a conversationalist. And when I'm not in conversation, I love sitting on a mountain somewhere and just grabbing a camera and doing my photo stuff and just having fun.
Love it. Thanks, Paul. We like to finish with 5 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I
What
guess
is your dream? What's your dream vacation?
Well, I think my dream vacation would be right now would be like a 1 month getaway in southern France and around the Mediterranean. I haven't been there, and I've dreamed of going there and doing that. And maybe it would be a month in the winter and then a month in the summer, so I could enjoy the beaches in the winter and then the skiing in the summertime. I mean, the other way around.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
Love it. Do you prefer audiobooks or paper books?
Paper.
If you only had 20 minutes to exercise, what would that exercise be?
It would probably be a good hard 20 minutes of tennis.
Just for the listeners, Paul is a very, very good tennis player. So that's why the tennis pops up that side. Second last question. What is a quality that you look for most in a good friend?
I would say mutual support. I think that's it. There are so many challenges in life and in many cases, difficult people and even family challenges and things. I want to surround myself, especially at my age, with people who kind of appreciate who I am and I appreciate who they are. We can be there for each other and it reminds me of a saying. It's not that I want to be their friend or have them be my friend blindly. I want them to tell me what's so about things if I'm going awry or something. It reminds me of an old phrase. Your acquaintances tell you what you want to hear and your friends tell you what you need to hear.
Very true. Last question. What would your death row meal be? What would your final meal be?
Probably, I would say it would be a surf and turf. I would have to have a really great mix of Gulf shrimp, which is where I'm from, Galveston, Texas originally. Gulf shrimp with maybe some gumbo and a nice juicy steak, a prime rib with horseradish and this and that, and some really great fresh vegetables and a great bottle of wine.
I love it, Paul. That is a great last meal. And on that, I really do appreciate your time on Protea Conversations. Thank you for being a guest.
Well, it's been my pleasure, Zane. Great to talk with you and look forward to seeing you soon.
And with that, we ended another Protea Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today, we've gained insight from our guest and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussion has given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Protea Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence, embracing growth. Thank you for listening, be kind, and goodbye from Protea Conversations.